True strength is not the armor we wear in front of the world, nor the image we project to prove we are unshaken. It is something deeper, quieter, and far more mysterious. It is born in the hidden chambers of the psyche, in the unseen depths, where chaos meets consciousness, and pain becomes a silent teacher. Strength does not emerge from avoiding life's storms, but from walking through them with open eyes and a willing heart. Every challenge that breaks the surface of your being is an invitation to journey inward, to face the unhealed, the unacknowledged, and the unloved within yourself. The psyche is not a battlefield to conquer, but a landscape to explore. It holds both the shadows that haunt you and the treasures that can liberate you. When you are stripped of certainty, when control slips from your hands, something ancient within you stirs. The collapse of the known world is not destruction, it is revelation. What falls apart on the outside is often what was false or incomplete within. The psyche demands authenticity. It will not let you build a life disconnected from your inner truth. It sends signals through anxiety, depression, loss, and longing, reminders that the outer life cannot thrive if the inner one is ignored. Real strength arises when you no longer run from these signals, but meet them with presence. You begin to realize that what feels like breaking is, in truth, the soul reshaping itself into wholeness. True strength is born when the ego surrenders its illusion of control. The ego wants to appear strong, but real strength does not care for appearances. It does not shout, it does not boast. It is the quiet endurance that remains when everything else has fallen away. It is the stillness that watches, that listens, that endures the storm without needing to flee or fight. To touch this strength, one must descend into the depth where the conscious mind fears to go, the place of forgotten memories, denied feelings, and buried pain. In this descent, you meet the shadow, the part of yourself you have rejected. The shadow is not your enemy, it is the guardian of your unlived potential. When you turn toward it with courage, it no longer threatens you, it strengthens you. The psyche is like the roots of a great tree. The deeper the roots go into the darkness of the soil, the higher the branches can rise into the light. People who have suffered deeply often carry a quiet radiance, not because they escaped pain, but because they allowed it to refine them. They did not seek escape, they sought understanding. They learned to trust that within every breakdown hides a breakthrough. Within every ending lies a hidden beginning. Strength is not about being unhurt, it is about being unafraid of being hurt. It is about knowing that the soul cannot be destroyed by what happens to it. It can only be revealed. When you begin to honor your inner world, you stop measuring strength by how well you can suppress your feelings or hide your wounds. You realize that resilience grows not from resistance, but from integration. Every fragment of your being, every scar and every sorrow is part of a larger pattern forming within you. The more you accept your darkness, the more radiant your light becomes. To be strong is to know yourself beyond the surface, to be rooted in the unseen, anchored in what endures, even when the world shifts and the familiar dissolves. In the depths of the psyche lies the forge of transformation, where fear melts into awareness, pain becomes wisdom, and what once felt like weakness becomes the very source of your power. Resilience is often misunderstood. Many equate it with hardness, toughness, or the ability to withstand force without bending. They imagine strength as rigidity, an unyielding wall that refuses to crack under pressure. But true resilience is not the refusal to bend, it is the capacity to move, to sway, to adapt without losing the center of who you are. Life, in all its unpredictability, will test every assumption, every expectation, every sense of control you cling to. Those who endure with grace are not those who resist the currents of change, but those who learn to flow with them, like water shaping itself around the obstacles it encounters. Flexibility is the hidden core of resilience, and it is a lesson that only life itself can teach. To be rigid is to risk breaking. A tree that refuses to bend in the wind snaps, while the willow survives the storm. The same principle applies to the human spirit. When we meet adversity with unbending force, we may temporarily resist, but eventually the pressure accumulates until something gives. Flexibility does not mean weakness or surrender. It means understanding the dynamics of life deeply enough to know when to push and when to yield, when to hold fast and when to let go. The resilient person recognizes that strength is not static, it is dynamic, responsive, and evolving. It is the art of maintaining integrity while remaining open to transformation. True resilience begins with self-awareness. To navigate life's turbulence, one must first understand the contours of one's own inner landscape. Which beliefs are rigidly held, which patterns are resistant to change, which parts of ourselves demand perfection or control. By observing these tendencies, we cultivate the ability to respond rather than react. Flexibility arises from conscious choice, not mere circumstance. It is the capacity to bend without losing oneself, to adapt without compromising essential values, to change course when necessary while remaining anchored in purpose. Adaptation is a form of intelligence. The world is not fixed. It is a constantly shifting environment of relationships, events, and unexpected disruptions. Resilience requires the ability to assess, adjust, and realign in response to these changes. It is not survival for survival's sake, but survival in a way that allows growth. Those who cling rigidly to their expectations or resist the lessons of experience often find themselves caught in cycles of frustration, anger, or despair. Flexibility, however, allows the individual to navigate these cycles with equanimity. When one can let go of what cannot be controlled, one gains the freedom to act where influence is possible, and in that space, true strength manifests. Flexibility also requires courage. To bend is to risk the unknown. It is to face uncertainty without the comfort of rigid certainty. It is to open oneself to change, even when it challenges deeply held beliefs or exposes vulnerability. This willingness to embrace uncertainty, to lean into discomfort without retreating, is a hallmark of resilience. It is a quiet, unassuming strength that does not demand recognition or validation. It is the steady presence that endures, because it does not resist the natural ebb and flow of life, but moves with it. Resilience is reflected not in the absence of struggle, but in the capacity to emerge from struggle with awareness, growth, and adaptability. Those who are truly resilient understand that life's difficulties are not obstacles to be crushed, but teachers to be observed, navigated, and learned from. They cultivate the inner elasticity that allows them to absorb shocks, recover from setbacks, and transform disruption into opportunity. They know that being flexible does not diminish their power, it enhances it, making them capable of enduring, evolving, and ultimately thriving within a world that is constantly changing. In embracing flexibility, we cultivate a profound trust in ourselves and the flow of life. We learn to respond to hardship with wisdom rather than resistance, to pivot when circumstances demand, and to hold the essence of our being while the external world shifts and bends around us. Resilience, in its truest form, is not measured by how unyielding we can be, but by how gracefully we can bend, adjust, and continue forward with integrity, awareness, and an openness to the lessons hidden in every challenge, Suffering is one of life's most inevitable experiences, yet it is also one of its greatest teachers. Every human being at some point encounters pain, loss, or hardship that seems unbearable. We resist it, fight it, or deny it, hoping somehow to avoid its weight. And yet, suffering in its purest form holds a profound potential. The potential to awaken something within us that cannot be accessed through comfort or ease. Pain, when it is recognized, acknowledged, and given meaning, ceases to be merely an affliction. It transforms into power, a quiet, enduring force that shapes the soul and strengthens the spirit. The key is not to eliminate suffering, but to understand it, to find the thread of purpose woven through the fabric of our trials. Human consciousness has the remarkable ability to interpret experiences, to extract significance from events that would otherwise appear random or cruel. When suffering is left unexamined, it becomes a weight that crushes the spirit. It breeds resentment, bitterness, and despair. Yet when it is examined, reflected upon, and integrated, suffering becomes a mirror, revealing truths about ourselves and the world that no comfort could teach. It shows us where we are weak, where we have denied aspects of our own being, and where our values and priorities are most tested. It forces introspection, demanding that we confront questions of identity, purpose, and meaning. The transformation of suffering into power is not instantaneous. It requires courage to face the rawness of pain without fleeing into distraction or denial. It requires honesty to acknowledge the emotions we would rather suppress: grief, fear, shame, and anger. And it requires patience, for the meaning of suffering is often not immediately apparent. It emerges gradually, like a seed slowly breaking through the soil, revealing growth that is invisible at first, but undeniable over time. The act of finding meaning is itself empowering. It reclaims agency in the face of circumstances that may feel uncontrollable, reminding us that even in suffering, we are not powerless. When suffering is given meaning, it ceases to be arbitrary. Each challenge, loss, or failure becomes a lesson, a guidepost on the path of personal growth. The wounds we endure are not meaningless scars, they are maps of resilience, markers of the inner work we have done and the wisdom we have gained. This process transforms the individual from a passive sufferer into an active participant in life's unfolding. Power is born not from the avoidance of pain, but from the ability to navigate it with awareness and intentionality. The person who discovers purpose within suffering carries a strength that cannot be measured by external circumstances. It is a quiet confidence rooted in the knowledge that they have faced the depths and emerged with understanding. Meaning transforms suffering because it reframes the narrative of life. Instead of seeing oneself as a victim of circumstance, one begins to see oneself as a participant in a larger story, one in which adversity is both a challenge and an opportunity. Suffering becomes a teacher, and every hardship becomes a lesson in resilience, empathy, and self-mastery. Through this lens, pain is no longer something to escape, but something to engage with, something to learn from, and ultimately, something to transcend.
History and literature are filled with examples of individuals who turned profound suffering into extraordinary power.
Those who endure great trials and emerge with clarity, insight, and compassion exemplify this principle. Their strength is not born of immunity to pain, but of the capacity to find meaning within it, to let the lessons of hardship shape their character and inform their actions. The transformation of suffering into power is intimately tied to awareness and consciousness. It requires a willingness to sit with discomfort, to ask the difficult questions, and to listen deeply to what the experience is teaching.
When one is able to do this, suffering ceases to be a passive experience and becomes an active source of insight, growth, and empowerment.
It is through this process that adversity becomes not merely a challenge, but a catalyst for profound inner strength, shaping individuals who are capable of enduring, creating, and leading with depth and authenticity. The soul does not seek perfection, it seeks wholeness. In a world obsessed with achievement, image, and control, we are often taught to measure ourselves by standards that are external, rigid, and incomplete. We strive to appear flawless, to mask our vulnerabilities, and to present only the polished aspects of ourselves. Yet true strength, depth, and resilience are not born from perfection. They are born from integration, the courageous willingness to acknowledge, embrace, and harmonize all the fragments of our being, even those we consider unworthy, broken, or undesirable. The soul longs to be known, not to be edited or censored. It calls for honesty, for reconciliation, and for the acceptance of complexity that perfectionism can never provide. Integration is the process of bringing the conscious and unconscious into dialogue, of recognizing that every part of ourselves, light and dark, joy and pain, courage and fear, is a vital piece of a larger whole. The parts we deny, suppress, or reject do not disappear. They grow in shadow, influencing our thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways we often fail to understand. Attempting to achieve perfection is futile because it ignores these hidden forces. True resilience and inner strength arise when we acknowledge our contradictions and contradictions within the world around us. To integrate the self is to allow these opposing forces to coexist without annihilating one another, creating a dynamic balance that is rich, complex, and alive. Perfectionism is often rooted in fear, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being seen as inadequate. It demands uniformity and control, but the human psyche is not uniform, and life is rarely under complete control. The pursuit of perfection is exhausting because it sets an impossible standard. It asks us to deny the very aspects of ourselves that are most human. Integration, by contrast, requires courage, not to hide flaws, but to meet them with curiosity, compassion, and understanding. It requires a willingness to explore one's own darkness and to discover that within it lies potential wisdom and vitality. The soul's demand for integration also extends to our relationships, experiences, and environment. Life presents contradictions at every turn, loss and gain, suffering and joy, failure and triumph. To navigate these realities effectively, we must cultivate the capacity for internal harmony that reflects in the external world. When we are fragmented internally, we project this fragmentation outward, creating conflict, confusion, and dissatisfaction. When we integrate our own complexities, however, we develop resilience that allows us to respond to challenges with clarity and balance rather than reaction and rigidity. Integration fosters authenticity, enabling us to act from a place of wholeness rather than from fear, shame, or a desire to maintain appearances. The process of integration is neither linear nor comfortable. It involves confronting the shadow aspects of the self, the anger, the envy, the grief, the shame that we often deny. These elements are not enemies. They are teachers, messengers, carrying vital information about the needs and truths we have ignored. By facing them without judgment, by acknowledging their presence and understanding their role in our lives, we gradually create a cohesive, resilient, and aware self. Integration is not the absence of imperfection. It is the recognition that every imperfection carries meaning, and every contradiction contributes to the richness of life. When we honor the soul's demand for integration, we shift from living in fear of failure to living in curiosity and openness. We cease to resist the parts of ourselves that feel uncomfortable, and we begin to see value in every experience, every emotion, and every aspect of our being. This acceptance does not equate to complacency. It does not mean we stop growing or striving. It means that growth is rooted not in judgment, but in understanding, and that true resilience comes from the harmony created when all parts of the self are acknowledged, validated, and woven together into a living whole. Integration allows us to embrace life fully, to engage with its complexity without being overwhelmed, and to cultivate an inner strength that is deep, flexible, and enduring. It transforms suffering into insight, conflict into awareness, and fragmentation into coherence. The soul does not ask for perfection. It asks for courage, honesty, and the commitment to bring every part of ourselves into the light so that the totality of who we are may emerge in clarity, presence, and authenticity. Your greatest power is not found in wealth, status, or influence. It is found within the quiet realm of conscious awareness. Most people live their lives on autopilot, moving through days and years, reacting to circumstances, emotions, and impulses without pause or reflection. They are carried by the current of habit, expectation, and external pressures, often unaware of the forces shaping their inner and outer reality. True strength, resilience, and mastery arise not from controlling the world around you, but from mastering the world within. Conscious awareness is the lens through which you can perceive yourself clearly, understand your motivations, and respond to life with intention rather than reaction. Awareness begins with presence. To be truly aware is to observe your thoughts, feelings, and impulses without judgment or denial. It is to recognize the patterns that govern your behavior and the narratives that unconsciously direct your choices. In this clarity lies power. When you see yourself as you are, unvarnished and whole, you are no longer a slave to your past or your fears. You gain the ability to intervene in your own life, to choose responses rather than being dictated by automatic reactions. This conscious engagement is what separates those who merely endure life from those who navigate it with purpose and resilience. The power of awareness is intimately connected to responsibility. To be aware is to acknowledge that your life is shaped not solely by external circumstances, but by the inner landscape you cultivate. Every thought, every belief, and every habitual response contributes to the reality you experience. Conscious awareness allows you to identify where you are giving away your power, whether through reactive anger, unresolved trauma, or unquestioned assumptions. By shining the light of awareness on these hidden patterns, you reclaim agency over your life. You discover that while you cannot control every event, you can control how you engage with it. This discernment is the foundation of true strength. Awareness also grants clarity in the midst of chaos. Life is unpredictable, often bringing confusion, conflict, and suffering. In such moments, those who lack conscious awareness may act impulsively, escalating problems or compounding their own pain. Those who cultivate awareness, however, can observe the situation without being overwhelmed by it. They can pause, assess, and respond with discernment. This ability to step back and witness rather than react is a profound form of power, for it allows you to navigate challenges with composure, strategic insight, and emotional balance. Furthermore, conscious awareness deepens understanding of both self and others. When you are aware of your own emotions, motivations, and triggers, you begin to perceive the same dynamics in those around you. You recognize that conflict is often rooted in fear or misunderstanding, that judgments are projections, and that reactions are rarely personal but arise from complex internal patterns. This insight enables empathy, measured action, and communication that is rooted in clarity rather than reactivity. Awareness transforms relationships turning them from sources of stress and confusion into opportunities for growth, understanding, and connection. The cultivation of awareness requires patience and practice. It is not a one-time achievement, but an ongoing discipline of observation, reflection, and introspection. It demands the courage to face uncomfortable truths, to confront habits that no longer serve you, and to acknowledge aspects of yourself that you may have long denied. It asks for humility, for the recognition that no matter how much knowledge or skill you possess, the inner world is infinitely complex and ever-evolving. Yet, with consistent effort, awareness becomes second nature, a guiding compass that informs decisions, shapes character, and fortifies resilience. When you live in conscious awareness, life ceases to be a series of random events that happen to you. You begin to perceive the underlying patterns, to recognize the lessons embedded in hardship, and to act from a place of informed choice rather than reactive impulse. You gain access to a deep reservoir of strength that is unshakable, not because the world bends to your will, but because you have cultivated mastery over your own mind, emotions, and attention. This inner mastery becomes the source of every meaningful action, every authentic connection, and every enduring accomplishment.